everything about gaming is misunderstood, which actually is great. It creates a lot of opportunity if you have an information edge in gaming. The first thing that is misunderstood about it is the size. We're talking about few $100 billion, right? Call it 300, 400, whatever it is. The other thing that is misunderstood is this often tendency to translate what is known by investors in PC console gaming into mobile. And those are completely separate businesses. They have nothing to do with each other. The way they ideate, the way they distribute, the way they improve, the way they build, they're all completely different. So you have a market where the size is misunderstood, the business models are misunderstood, and also it's very, very easy to distribute in mobile gaming. It's very easy to distribute your product to billions of people in one go. If you build an amazing product, it's really about iteration. It's about, perfecting the mix between creativity and analytics. And that's ultimately what attracted me to gaming, is the people there. People in gaming are, I often say a mobile gaming studio, or you can even say a gaming studio, is if a movie studio had a baby with a hedge fund. This is what a mobile gaming studio looks like to me, because it's the perfect mixture of creativity, but also very, very heavy on data and analytics and so on.
Here's a few words from our beloved sponsor. Discover where operational expertise meets innovation. With end-to-end coverage across fund admin, tax, accounting, compliance, ESG, and more, we take care of the complexities so you can focus on what matters most. Whether it's supporting visionaries or maximizing returns for your LPs, our tech-driven and comprehensive solutions empower you to achieve your goals with confidence. Partner with ACE Alternatives to streamline your operations and elevate your fund success.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
Welcome back, everyone, to the European VC podcast. Today, I have a very dear friend with me, Enis from e2vc. Anyone who has been following EVC for the last, 4 years we've been around, they will know that Enis is a dear friend. We've done many events together, and as we just talked about before we started recording here, we've also done events where I ended up on my face right into the floor. So with that, let's get into this. Akin, we've invited you to come on the podcast because you and Enis go way back.
Way back.
Tell us a little about yourself, and Enis, also you should come in and tell us a bit about e2vc.
But he doesn't remember how we met, so.
Well, I'll first talk about that part. So Enis and my brother actually met in a nightclub, apparently in our summer house, Cheshire, and they were hitting on the same girl.
Talking to the same girl.
And they kind of started off on the wrong foot as a result, and then they, during the conversation, realized they're both going off to college in Canada in the same university. So they ended up rooming together. So the first time I met Enis was like, he was like, I don't know, 17 or 18 or something like that. And, I just, he's just such an easy guy to like, and he's awesome. So I kept in touch. I heard Enis stories from my brother. I heard my brother's stories from Enis. And then I just said, like, this guy has, I admired a lot the kind of the hustlerness and the gusto and everything. So when he launched 500 startups, I was like, listen, man, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. And then he called me up on that, and then I kind of helped them launch their fund, etc. So that's kind of how we met, right, Enis? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so I was actually homeless in Boston. I didn't have a place to stay. I was 18, went for a weekend to Boston from Montreal. And then that's how I met him. So I had to be likable. I had to make sure that he's going to like me so that, I'll have a place to stay. But then that, I guess, continued for 15 more years. And yeah, Akin was the first person to land me my first internship, land me my first full-time job. He actually introduced me to my ex-partner in the fund arena. So, he's been instrumental.
And what a beautiful way to celebrate that by getting both of you on the European VC podcast. Akin, we did not at all here talk about who you are, what you're about, why the European VC podcast makes sense for you to come on, and so on. So let's get all that out of the way as well.
Yeah. So, I'm Turkish originally. Basically, my life, you can divide it up into three chunks. So 0 to 16, I was in Turkey. I grew up there. I'm very much Turkish at heart, at, mind, etc. And then I moved to the States when I was 16, pretty much by myself, to a place called Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere. And then I lived in the US for about 16 years. So between 16 to 32, I lived there. I went to high school there, went to university, master's, MBA, all of it, first job, first experience, etc. I must say I was raised effectively in the US. Really, the majority of the time I've been alive, I've been in the US. And then the third bucket is now the UK. And I've been here for about 13 years. We moved here in 2012. And this is kind of where I was going to say I matured, but if my wife heard that, she would laugh at me. But this is kind of where I kind of grew up. So I'm an engineer by background. I studied engineering, went to grad school. I was doing PhD in engineering. Had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And as with most people who have no idea what they want to do with their life, I ended up at McKinsey somehow. So I joined McKinsey. I was there for about 2 years. I absolutely hated it. But it was very valuable. It kind of gave me like a sticker of, okay, this guy is, he can whatever it is that people think about McKinsey people. But, and then I went to United Nations. I worked for a company that does consulting for the United Nations. And that was really great. But I realized that I was not going to make any money doing that. So then I went to business school. I really wanted to learn more about like the business world and, how things work. And I went to Harvard. I graduated in 2009. And while at Harvard, I decided that I want to go into technology as a career. I graduated in 2009, went to Skype, was there a couple of years. And right after Skype, I fell in love with the gaming, I would say model, gaming business. I'm not a gamer. It's pretty crazy that, I've been in gaming. Yeah, I'm not a gamer. Like, I mean, in the stereotypical sense, I'm not a gamer. Like, I don't have a PlayStation at all. I don't understand much about like, console games. I mean, I understand a little bit, but like for someone who's spent the last 14 years of his career in gaming, I can't say that I'm a gamer. But I fell in love with the business of games and especially mobile gaming and how transformative that was going to be. So then I spent a career doing that. So initially as an advisor at Peak Games, joining Facebook, leading the European games team there. For about 5 years, I was there initially with the European games team, then building up Audience Network, and then Activision Blizzard. And while I was at Activision Blizzard, I decided to start Tripledot, and with my two co-founders. And Tripledot was true European success story. I know we'll talk about this in a little bit. Both my co-founders were Israeli. I was Turkish. I am Turkish. And then we decided to build that up in the UK. And then, Tripledot reached $1.4 billion in valuation in about 5 years. It was a big success story for, many reasons. And then we did everything they told us not to do. So we did, we built two companies at the same time. So, Tripledot was like growing, and we also built Luna Labs, which is a B2B business. We scaled that. We sold it to Iron Source in 2021. And and then I was also doing quite a bit of angel investing, specifically in mobile gaming. I can talk about why that is as well. And that has gone quite well as well, being the first investor in companies like Dream Games, Spike Games, Bigger, Agave, among many others.
And both of you, of course, are quite avid gaming investors. And for that reason, I think we should really spend some time here talking a bit about gaming as an investment vertical. And as maybe I should bring you in first to say, like, tell us how you as a generalist think about gaming, why you think it's a sector that's worthwhile, because there's a lot of generalists that have not done as many gaming investments as you have.
We haven't done much either. Back when we started the fund in 2016, and my partner Rina, she was one of the founders of Peak Games, we were like, hey, gaming is too cyclical. It's like having a lottery ticket. It's very hit or miss. It's not venturable. So we didn't do any gaming up until 2019. That's when we met with the Dream Games team. And yes, they were amazing. We were at the end of our fund life cycle, and it was a small fund, $10 million. So it's not like you can do a gaming deal with a small fund. Unfortunately, you can't. But the way dream games performed and then how gaming in general did after 2019 obviously changed our mindset. So 2021 onwards, when we raised the second fund, the 70 million fund, we decided we have to do gaming. We should do gaming. And if you look at the success stories from Turkey, you'll see there are multiple unicorns and probably a dozen companies that are valued 100 million plus in gaming, which shows the talent in the country. So not doing gaming as a VC based out of Turkey just doesn't make any sense at all. And then Akin here, I mean, I knew nothing about gaming. I was trying to memorize what Akin is telling me all the time, and then I would sell it to people, whether that's our investors, that's other entrepreneurs, etc. I'm good at memorizing stuff. I guess I never truly understand stuff. I just memorize them, and then Akin was my source of content around that.
Beautiful. And as you said one thing there, which was out of a small fund, you can't do gaming. Let me double click on that. Why can't you do gaming as a small fund?
So a lot of the gaming companies, especially the best ones, even in a place like Turkey, they start by raising $3 to $5 to $10 million rounds. So even from a financial perspective, you can't get allocation if you want to. I mean, of course, you can get 1% or 0.5% of a company if you're lucky, but financially that doesn't make that much sense. And if you're optimizing for ownership, you have to be putting in larger tickets. So the fund size needs to be somewhat big for you to be able to do that. And the reason for that being is content creation. It's a content heavy business, and the creation of that content takes a lot of time, takes a lot of iteration, and takes a lot of human power. So if you're going to optimize for a 24 months runway, it's not like a B2B SaaS company where you can have 5 or 6 engineers and then, raise accordingly. You have to have multiple departments, maybe a team of a dozen, if not more people, and then all of that add up. But Akin would better, I guess, answer that because, Akin is involved with probably like 100 or so gaming studios. I made the figure up. Is it true? 100? Is that a correct estimate?
It's a little bit too much, but it's like 50, I guess.
So, I mean, the moment you became a VC, it went from 50 to 100. You have to exaggerate stuff, make it up. It's 100 now.
That's how you make it 2x very easy. Akin, tell me your perspective on gaming, and you are, of course, a prolific gaming investor. So,
it's really funny because I think it is the most misunderstood business in the entire world. I mean, of all the businesses that I spent time looking at in my career, everything about gaming is misunderstood, which actually is great. It creates a lot of opportunity if you have an information edge in gaming. The first thing that is misunderstood about it is the size. People often say, I think it's well known by investors that now gaming is very big, but it's genuinely misunderstood how big it really is. So we say gaming is bigger than, I think music and movies combined, which is true. But that's really underrepresenting a lot of what gaming is. So gaming, more than half of it is mobile gaming, but I think even the size of the mobile gaming market is misunderstood. It doesn't take into account advertising-based monetization, doesn't take into account some of the alternative payment solutions that are popular in certain markets in Southeast Asia and Asia, etc. So it's a humongous market. We're talking about few $100 billion, right? Call it 300, 400, whatever it is. The other thing that is misunderstood is this often tendency to translate what is known by investors in PC console gaming into mobile. And those are completely separate businesses. They have nothing to do with each other. The way they ideate, the way they distribute, the way they improve, the way they build they're all completely different. So you have a market where the size is misunderstood, the business models are misunderstood, and also it's very, very easy to distribute in mobile gaming. It's very easy to distribute your product to billions of people in one go. If you build an amazing product, and Dream Games showed us this better than anybody else, is if you build an amazing product, you can literally distribute it to billions of people in a relatively short period of time. It's really about iteration. It's about, perfecting the mix between creativity and analytics. And that's ultimately what attracted me to gaming, is the people there. People in gaming are, I often say a mobile gaming studio, or you can even say a gaming studio is if a movie studio had a baby with a hedge fund. This is what a, mobile gaming studio looks like to me, because it's the perfect mixture of, creativity, but also very, very heavy on, data and analytics and so on.
I met a Danish founder of a gaming company that it actually was quite successful. I think they sold for $50 something million. And he then left as soon as he could. And he did so because he said, I started in gaming because I love to create great games, create stories, create experiences that really encapsulate or capture people's dreams and so on. But I kind of felt that I ended up being someone who was getting people addicted to the drug of games, meaning betting, meaning buying items, so on and so forth. And like he almost felt like he was the designer behind a casino rather than someone creating stories. Do you think that's a fair critique of the gaming industry?
I don't think so, but he's entitled to his opinion, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I personally don't have any problem with trying to create experiences that are enjoyed by millions of people. So, like, it's funny when we are at Candy Crush. So I worked at King for a while, as I just shared, and both at Candy Crush, but also at Tripledot. We would get these emails from people, that said, my, whatever, my father or something has like terminal illness, but really the only thing that he's hanging on to life with is Budoku. I really want to thank you guys. It provides an escape, etc. I'm not saying that to kind of sound high and mighty. Like, let's be clear, we're all doing it for the money. I think we have to be very clear about that. But I think if you're doing it for the money, it provides a kind of level of transparency. But if you're doing it for the art, for the storytelling, yes, I think I could see why certain people would feel, I guess, money gets in the way or something like that. So I don't think it's yeah,
Lost its virginity once we
yeah.
figured out the real business model for games. I played World of Warcraft for 2 years of my life, like obsessively. So so and man, am I happy. And my son is now getting to the age where he's playing, and I am a big backer of him, and I think it's a great idea that he plays a bunch, because you learn a lot, man. You learn a lot about grit, you learn a lot of language, you learn a lot about culture, collaborating, so on. So I absolutely love games. And go on with your question.
Yeah, I was going to ask Akin. I mean, obviously, mobile gaming has exploded over the past, say, 6, 7 years. But then a lot of the things, a lot of the business dynamics or the business levers that you've pointed out are not just more for mobile gaming. Those are also for AAA studios, console games, PC games, etc. But those haven't grown as much. So my question is, without such a platform shift that increases the total number of users, would you still be that bullish on gaming? If the whole total industry market size, whether that's number of users or the number of amount spent, if that stagnated, would you still be bullish on investing into gaming on a pre-seed level?
The short answer is probably not, but there's a nuance in that, and the nuance is this: when I fell in love with gaming was because of social gaming. This is when in 2009 there was this phenomenon of Farmville that was taking over the Facebook platform. And mobile games weren't a real thing back then. They were just starting to emerge. So the thing about mobile is not that I love mobile devices and so on. It's just because it provides such ubiquity that the scale of the number of users you can reach in a short amount of period is huge. So I actually fell in love. I remember reading somewhere that there were more trucks sold inside Farmville than actual real life physical trucks in the US in a given day. So now it seems kind of a trivial piece of information. Back then, it just blew my mind, right? So then I kind of said, oh my God, so that is what I fell in love with. But then if you look at a mobile, the platforms that mobile, devices allow you to reach, it's absolutely mind-boggling. In a successful game, people spend north of an hour per day of their lives for many, 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 many years. That level of attention is absolutely mind-boggling. And you will see today that the biggest competition, it's kind of well known and accepted for gaming studios, is coming from not necessarily other gaming studios, but things like TikTok and Instagram, etc. We often saw in our data that there was like an Instagram outage, our usage would go up double-digit percentage points. So I guess the short answer is no, no. But the thing that I fell in love with was how universally accessible games were, and this is ultimately at the end of the day entertainment that we're providing. So I love the business model. I love how fun it is to create. I do like the monetary aspect of it, although if I was only doing it for money, I would, there are a lot of other people that provide other type of things for money, but gambling or betting or whatever, which I personally don't enjoy, but I don't judge them for enjoying that. I'm very clearly not doing it for the art alone, let's just say.
I want to ask you about something that's been baffling me. I have not been able to understand it. Maybe you as a gaming investor can. Why the hell has LinkedIn decided to add games to their platform?
I don't. Short answer is I don't know. I think gaming is sometimes seen as a panacea, as like a short fix to engagement problems that other people might have, or maybe they think it's gonna boost their platform or engagement or whatever. I mean, on a platform like LinkedIn, I agree that it probably doesn't make any sense. So it's not a panacea. When I was at Facebook, there was a lot of discussion about becoming much more friendly to gaming developers. And there was these like experiments that Facebook ran about, using the platform as a distribution mechanism for, taking a page out of the playbook of like WeChat and Kakao, etc. And ultimately those experiences didn't really pan out for different reasons, I think. But ultimately, people realize, like, the topic of the day today is like Telegram games and whether that's a real platform or not. And I actually think that, I've seen a lot of attempted platforms that are trying to do this. And I think that some of those efforts are really not going to work. There might be some short wins, and for really, really early adapters or for really kind of clever adaptations, there might be money to be made, but it doesn't build sustainable long-term value, in my opinion. That opinion might change. I might have to eat my words next year or so, which is very possible. But like currently, people that go to those platforms, they don't go in with a view to consume those type of experiences. Definitely not on LinkedIn. So then discovery becomes a problem, engagement becomes a problem. There's value, confusion, etc. So ultimately, I think we have to differentiate between, do I want to build long-term sustainable player habits and value, or do I just want to try to make a quick buck? Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I'm much more greedy on the long term and less greedy on the short term.
I want to ask you, because you are, to me, one of the very best investors in the emerging Europe, as e2vc stands for. I'd love to
It's
ask you
funny
about
how e2vc is similar to euvc, no? The branding. By the way, Akin hates the name, so I'm not going to ask him. But like, when I told you, hey, you're euvc, I'm going to become e2vc, how did that feel like for you?
When I saw it, I thought this is absolutely beautiful,
Really?
especially because you're like, when I looked at it and then I like squinted my eyes a little bit, and the people watching here on the show will also see the E and the 2 on
They're like a
Enis'
heart,
shirt.
no?
It looks like a heart. It's so beautiful.
Exactly. Not a lot of people can see it, man. It's only the artistic people can see that.
I'd love to ask you, Enis, the talent base in Eastern Europe, you said also out of Turkey. Can you talk a little bit about this, both the network dynamics and the continuation of the growth of the Turkish gaming developer ecosystem? Because I do see that quite a bit as something that's powerful in Europe.
So I don't think that it exists across Baltics and Eastern Europe and Turkey. We don't do gaming investments across the region. We mostly do it in Turkey. Poland, I think, has good talent in AAA and PC gaming, but we don't do that a lot. We do mobile gaming, and then Turkey leads the region by far. You can compare Turkey to Finland or Israel in terms of success. I think if you, on a forward-looking basis, you might say that Turkey is going to have more success than those two competitive countries just because of the talent that it has. And in trying to pinpoint why that talent exists in Turkey, I think it's tough. I can't point out a single reason why it's there. I think it's more so that the first unicorn in the country was Peak Games. And then that has its own spillover effects where there were 80 more studios that were founded, which pulled a lot of the young talent from, say, a decade ago to enter into gaming. And when your top tier talent goes into a certain industry, that has its own talent flywheel. That has its own talent network effect where talent wants to be where other talent is. And then you see, especially in arts and in art and product, you see amazing Turkish talent. I don't think development is as important when you compare it to other industries that we focus on. I think it's prioritizing a lot of the founding teams. We don't even see that there are sometimes not even engineers in the teams, but art is critical, product is critical, game design is critical. I don't know, Akin, what do you think? When you compare, obviously I didn't do any gaming investment outside Turkey, but you did a bunch.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, you can write a PhD thesis, so I'll try to summarize kind of what. So first, let's realize that what you said initially is so true. So I think right now doing gaming investments in Turkey is similar to like doing cybersecurity investments in Israel. Like the level of expertise and the level of kind of talent spillover, cross-pollination, etc., is just incredible. Why is that? So like I think if you look at Turkish, so it's a young country. So there's some really kind of infrastructural things that are in place. Those things are necessary, but not sufficient conditions for the success that we have seen. So some of these conditions are you have a country with a very young population that is very well educated. You have a really strong ecosystem of not only tech, but also, like Enis mentioned, very strangely, things that are related to storytelling. So Turkey is the second largest exporter of TV shows to the world after the United States, for example. So that
Oh,
there's
really?
creativity and there's also technical talent. And the other conditions that are in the country, right? You have an unstable currency, unstable geopolitical situation that really necessitates, and people like getting paid in foreign currency. So getting paid in dollars, getting paid in euros, etc., is great. And gaming is an industry where you have people that are super smart, but also can tell a story. And you have to be able to iterate. So there's low barriers to entry. So take e-commerce. So in 2010 there was an e-commerce wave in Turkey, and everybody and their grandmother was launching an e-commerce company. And this is because Turkey is a Darwinian society. People saw the success of companies like Trendyol, run by my very good friend Demet. She started that, and then everybody started to get into e-commerce. But e-commerce is actually a lot tougher to get into. They have to worry about like supply chain operations. Gaming comparatively is actually really easy to get into. It's harder to maybe differentiate and harder to scale, but it's just barriers to entry are low. And then as a result, like what Enis said, you had some really publicly celebrated success stories. So Peak Games, Gram Games, Rolik, Alictus, Good Job Games, all these companies, Massimo, they were all in a short period of time very successful and exited for several hundred million, if not billions of dollars in the case of Peak. So people said, oh, wait a minute, I can do that too. And that led to two things. One is if you go to today in like Europe or US, the best of the best of the best students, they want to build careers in, let's say, consulting and hedge funds, maybe tech, etc. And in Turkey, this is actually more and more in gaming, especially in mobile gaming. So you go to these like universities, the best students there, they go to those companies that we mentioned, like Dream and Spike and it's bigger, etc., or Good Job, etc. So like we are in a position where you have demonstrated success. It fits the country's natural resources in a way, from creativity, etc. The biggest thing I got to say, and I will say this as well, Turkish people, they work a lot. And gaming, especially mobile gaming, is not an innovation business anymore. It's an iteration business. So to win, you have to iterate, you have to work, you have to keep at it, etc. And this is, I'm not just celebrating the the hustle culture, the broadcast or whatever, but it's just a fact. And this is why you see success coming out of Turkey and other countries like China.
I feel like in some investments you do, you're more focused on gaming founders that have a vision of a product that's so differentiated that maybe in their first iteration they're gonna reach success. Let's call that more of like on the spectrum, it's more art than science. And then sometimes it's more the iteration, those short feedback cycles, and they're gonna get there eventually, step by step. They're getting to get that. Those are more scientific. That turns games into more of a science than art. But I feel like you do both. But in your statement a couple of seconds ago, you mentioned that more and more you think it's more the iterative process rather than it being the art or the creativity behind it. Can you elaborate on that?
Science exists across the board. So I would try not to invest too much in. I mean, it's a case by case thing, right? And I had been investing as an angel, and it's also a question of risk and reward. And sometimes, I see opportunities that are more the former, so someone that's super visionary and so on. If I thought it made sense for my personal wealth, I would participate. But I think that typically the risk in investing in the former type of founder is that whatever they do, it's still going to come down to execution, because having an idea is no longer enough. Any idea that you come up with is going to be cloned 7 ways into Sunday. So the joke that I have internally is like, if you have the best idea of how to build a game, like you just release it, and then like you see how other people make a much better game than you in like a week, right? So this is it's just true. So I always try to, err on the side of, iteration and science, etc. But you take someone like Soner, right, and what they were able to achieve with Dream Games. I mean, it is just incredibly inspiring what they're doing and how they're doing it. But it's not because they have the vision, but they also have the science and the iteration behind it as well.
I'd love to ask a bit about the European versus US ecosystem and kind of you're doubling down on Europe, Akin. Enis, you're obviously as well, but you're here in person, which Akin, you've built much of your career in the States. So I'd love to hear why Europe. Why do you think Europe is the right place? And I'll ask both of you here.
Okay, you might not like my answers, but I will be honest. I will be very
Cheap
transparent.
as fuck. Is that what you're gonna say?
No. I mean, I joke with Enis all the time. I say like, man, like you should go to Israel and like invest in Israel. There's such an amazing opportunity there for you. And he's like, no, I want to like build my career in like Lithuania and Slovakia. I was like, okay, you do you. The short answer is I'm married to an amazing woman who likes living in London. There's really no, two ways about it. Is being very honest. I love the US in many ways. I was raised in the US. I am, I think we just said like I have like a Turkish heart, and I think maybe a little bit Turkish, a little bit American brain now. But I think that, it's not like you are supporting a football team. You're going to say America is the best or Europe is the best. It's like we have to be able to see the nuance and the good things. So the good things about America, I'm not going to cover because you can go on Twitter and just like read all day about this, right? But I think the good things about Europe is obviously the talent is number one for me. You have such access to an incredible amount of talent and a diverse amount of talent, because you have different pockets of activity. Being in Europe means that you can actually, meet with, people and founders from, Germany, France, Israel, etc. So just think about like a 2-hour flight radius from Munich. You have, Paris, which is really strong in like AI, and the godfather of AI, Yann LeCoultre, is French, and Demis built AI, obviously DeepMind here in London. You also have, we talked about the gaming success of Turkey here. We talk about cybersecurity and how advanced Israeli tech is, and that's there. And you can't mention of how strong the developer ecosystem is in Eastern Europe, etc. So there's that diversity that, I really like. And, honestly, I also think that, it's like competing in a, whether you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond type of situation a little bit. So I think in Europe, the lack of some of these trillion-dollar companies is sometimes seen as like, why Europe fell short. I actually see that as an opportunity because it's such a new ecosystem. I mean, Silicon Valley has been around for decades. And if you remove Silicon Valley out of the US, then I think it becomes quite comparable in terms of innovation, et cetera, to Europe. So we're not really talking about US versus Europe. We're talking about Silicon Valley versus Europe, which is not a fair comparison. So if you're building a career in venture, you want to be in places where that you're going to be able to ride those tailwinds, et cetera. From a macro perspective, I had to also mention China. I believe that there's a 50, 60-year gap or lag, I should say, between how a country does in high school math and science and between their position in the world. If you go back 50, 60 years ago, US was actually the best in the world in high school math and science, believe it or not. It kind of feels unbelievable right now, to be honest. But the last 50, 60 years, it's very obvious that, the Asian countries are taking over the US, and, we're seeing some of those results nowadays. And the work ethic in those countries is just crazy. So, I don't have a loyalty to Europe. I personally don't, have any loyalty to, whatever. But I have, I do feel that there's a lot of opportunities that are overlooked in Europe potentially.
Enis, I gotta ask you to come in and say your part, other than your empire building in Eastern Europe. Why are you bullish on Europe?
From a venture capital standpoint, I think what's different about emerging Europe is because of the nature of global revenues and also with the gaming companies, you can actually ride the power law. But if you look at unicorns in Germany, for example, 80% of their revenue would be coming from Germany. And that puts its own ceiling into the upside potential of that opportunity. I would say the same for France. I would say the same for the UK. A lot of the success stories are very hyper-local success stories, unfortunately. And although people compare Germany, France, or the UK to the US, you can't compare them to each other after that scale because you do hit the wall after a certain point. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think what Akin said is really true, that betting on Europe is a big bet on talent, but then you have a massive disadvantage when it comes to the financing ecosystem, whether it's downstream capital or actually M&A or IPO. So you have to hedge against that and be able to play that game in the US. But then taking a big bet on the US, I think, is a big disadvantage when it comes to talent because there's a lot of really strong talent network effects in certain cities in the US, and then it's really competitive. Talent retention is really tough. So you have to find ways to scale talent as you scale. And a lot of the times that's outside the US, which means you have to build operations in places like Europe to be able to scale your tech team. So it's just, you have to be aware what you optimize for and what you de-optimize for so that you can hedge against what you had the disadvantage in. And then if you take Silicon Valley out of the equation, then US versus Europe becomes incomparable in a way where Europe would win by far. I think it wouldn't even be equal.
If you also take out the 2% best deals in the US, which all tend to go to the same firms, which if you're not in them, you can almost by definition say, okay, I'm not going to touch those deals. And then all of a sudden, the US ecosystem is maybe not as an exciting place to be investing.
But I want to say one thing here. I mean, we would be intellectually dishonest if we're not talking about the humongous gap in mentality. I think this is the biggest thing. We can talk about talent and, those are all things that are very important. But it is true that you're not going to win the war in technological innovation if we don't change the mentality in Europe. I mean, that is... I read this on Twitter a lot, and like the people that are kind of saying this propaganda are people that I don't personally love and care for necessarily. But let's be honest, they're right. It's just a lot easier to build a company in US for many reasons, mainly psychological reasons. Like if you start a company in Europe, you go to your, middle school classmates and say, hey, I'm starting a company, whatever, or college classmates, whatever. You're more likely to get laughed out of the room in Europe than you are in the US. That is a huge problem. And that permeates every fabric of society in Europe.
I got to ask you on that one, because to me, that argument runs counter to the entire premise that a VC backable founder does not give a fuck about anyone else, and they'll run through walls, and they're hugely intrinsically motivated, and they dream big by definition and so on, which means, okay, if there's then a prevalence of this type of profile in the US, you can argue, right? But I just think that the reaction of your external environment, if you're a VC founder, you're going to do it no matter what anyone says to you.
I think it's all about the environment you're growing up in. And we're talking about, what you're saying is true in a sense. If you're a special kind of person, you're not going to care. But that's not to say that many people that would become special are not discouraged from a very early age. If you had the ecosystem, I have a lot of really, 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 really intelligent friends that are in Turkey that are never going to start companies. And I can tell you, it's not because there's something intrinsically necessarily wrong. It's just because, they are growing up in an environment where, they just didn't even know that was an option. Whereas if you have that environment, it's just a law of large numbers. So if you have that environment, ultimately you're going to have more winners, and we all need heroes in our life, right? So if you're a kid in Romania, Daniel from UiPath is going to be a hero for you, no matter what. If you're in Turkey, Sidar is going to be a role model for you because he's achieved something that other people haven't. But if you have that environment, you're going to have many more role models, and it's just going to just permeate, it's going to trickle down effectively.
We can continue this conversation for ages, and we've had it many times on the European VC podcast. What we have not spoken about, though, before is the future of gaming, and I think specifically, I think we need to touch on AI and how AI is going to impact gaming. Of course, anyone can imagine how generative AI should be able to give you completely crazy storyline in your game. But that's probably not the first application we're going to see. So I'd love to ask the two of you, where are you seeing AI impacting gaming?
So I think historically, so the company Enis mentioned is Layer AI. I'm a huge fan, and we're gonna do a lot of interesting things together. I think gaming typically is an industry that adapts to things very quickly and very successfully. So when there's a new platform, new technology, gaming companies are almost always the first ones to try and to adopt. And this has been true for platforms, Windows platform first companies, games, Facebook, same, mobile, the same, etc. For AI, indeed, we've seen a lot of gaming companies already adopt to lots of the AI technology, mostly on the generative AI side. And that's exciting in and of itself because, you gain a lot of efficiency, the output of your work improves a ton, and, the creative power of your entity just kind of goes through the roof. Perhaps more interestingly, what will happen is, especially on the mobile side, we're seeing a lot of attempts at using AI to change the fundamental core gameplay. So the level difficulties, the live operations that you might be doing inside your game, the monetization approaches, etc. That I think I'm only seen one or two companies that have actually done really well there, and they've both been out of China. But that I think is going to be the next frontier, is not, obviously, how do I use generative AI to make my existing creative operations better is great. But if you can actually, use AI to build a better game, I think that's kind of the $1 trillion question here.
And I think with AI, it comes in waves, right? Like 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, with GPT-2, there was Jasper, and that kind of shifted the whole industry where a lot of companies went to dozens of millions of dollars revenues, not hundreds, and then that category became very AI enabled. Everyone's using AI in those industries. Then came multimedia, images, videos, voice. Over the past 2 years, you also have one of our portfolio companies, Fall AI, doing great. They've raised a lot of money from top tier funds. Now we're seeing a lot in code development with Lovable, Bolt. They're doing dozens of millions of revenue. It still hasn't come to games yet. People are trying, because I also agree with Akin that gaming is one of the fields where they use technology a lot, whether that's crypto, whether that's blockchain, whether that's desktop PCs from decades ago. You would see that gaming developers, or gaming users are the first early adapters. So they have been dwelling with AI. It's just that AI wasn't there yet. But when that wave comes, it does create, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. And I think the keyword there is going to be hyper personalization of, stories, characters, gaming assets, levels on a per user basis.
I can only imagine myself sitting there playing World of Warcraft and then having an NPC that comes up with me and he has his whole AI generated script behind him to make me buy some extra equipment. I think that can be incredibly efficient and
Exactly.
very disruptive to the experience. Cool, guys. Anything that we haven't covered about Europe? Maybe now we've spoken a bunch. I think you should talk a little bit about the 100 million euro fund, or dollar fund, I guess.
They're the same thing now, no?
No, well, is it that right now? Yeah, probably parity.
It's almost.
So it's not 100 million, but it's not too far from that. So I'll let you guys guess. I don't actually know if I can disclose the exact amount, but thereabouts. Yeah, I mean, look, it's been really interesting journey. Look, I think angel investing alone, without any information asymmetry, etc., I think is just not a very smart thing to do. So I've lost a lot of money just angel investing in things I have no idea about. And that was just, I was betting on, getting lucky, etc. And that's just not a smart strategy. And the reason I think that is, obviously all the good deals that are out there, that go to, the known entities in the world. And, I realize that if I'm seeing a deal in an area that's not mobile gaming, there's probably a reason I'm seeing it, and not other people. So, but in gaming, I feel over just the fact that I've been in this industry for so many years, I do have a little bit of an information asymmetry. I know the teams, I know the founders, I know how they think, etc. And I always felt really excited that we're just so much in the beginning stages of this industry. It's pretty crazy. So if you look at the poster stories or the poster boys of gaming, right? Take-Two, EA, Activision, they're all coming from the smaller bucket, So if you have the gaming industry as a whole, more than half is in mobile gaming, yet mobile gaming lacks the poster child of the industry. But you have businesses like Playrix, Supercell, Zynga, King, Dream Games, Tripledot. You have all these companies that are incredibly successful, and not many people actually know about them. That I felt that this A will change as a trend, and B, what's happening a lot now is I almost view of those companies as like universities that are giving birth to graduates who are now actually trained in really, really amazing places, and they want to go out and create their own companies. So I've been very bullish on that. It's a challenging market in gaming. It's much more competitive, but I think oftentimes venture investors, they kind of say, it's challenging, therefore I cannot find the good opportunities, or there's too much competition. I actually view that as challenging because people are actually making a ton of money there. And if you get in the right companies at the right time, you can make absolute killing. So I'm very excited. Yes, we're launching a fund to invest in mobile gaming companies only. And it will be, I think, one of the largest dedicated funds in mobile gaming. I have been discussing this with a few partners. They were excited to back me, given some of the angel investments I made, and also the fact that I come from an operating background, having created Tripledot, having run it for many years, having created Luna Labs, etc. I think the founders that I speak to are really excited to work with someone that has been in their shoes and hopefully can help them avoid some of the mistakes. I mean, there are a lot of good gaming investors out there, but there are very few that have actually been in a position where they've launched a company, and so on. So I think that has been resonating with people quite a bit, and I'm really, really excited. I mean, it's I honestly, I could tell you that this is the first time I'm not doing something for money. This is the first time. I mean, the money helps, but this is the first time I'm doing it because I absolutely love, like, this is what I would do if I wasn't doing a fund anyway. Like, I would invest my own money, as I've been doing with Enis and a few other folks all this time. I really enjoy talking to very smart people who are super hungry, seeing their ideas, actually getting excited by them. I have immense respect for them, and yeah, I think it's just really really interesting time to do what I'm doing.
And then from a strategy perspective, are you going to do follow-ons? Like in gaming, we see companies raise, I don't know, start with 3 to 5 million rounds, but then do 20, 50, 300, and then you got to stop where you got to stop. But are you going to is it going to be like a first ticket only fund, first and second ticket, no boundaries, God knows, maybe I'll just follow on forever? What's your stance?
About half the fund will be pre-seed and seed, so between $1 to $5 million checks. And the other 5+ is for kind of more mature opportunities. But it's not a follow-on bucket per se.
Yeah.
It could be companies that we feel excited about and so on. And so we don't have a dedicated kind of, this is how much I'm going to allocate for follow-on type strategy. The idea is really, this is a macro bet on the mobile gaming sector as a whole. But we're also going to be like quite, opportunistic. If we see an amazing gaming deal, we'll obviously, try to do that if it makes sense. But really, my kind of bread and butter, what I know best, is mobile gaming. So the idea, the thesis is, let's try to pick the best companies in mobile gaming because we all believe that, it's going to make a lot of economic sense going forward.
And geographic-wise, is it UK, Europe, Israel, MENA?
Everywhere.
Where do you start?
Everywhere.
Including the US.
In US, obviously US, Europe, Turkey, Israel, etc. And then beyond that, I facetiously say everywhere. They'll probably not have some issues doing investments in North Korea, etc. But good teams can come out of everywhere, right? So to the extent we are allowed to do investments in certain jurisdictions, we will do, but there's no geographical constraint saying you can only operate here or something like that.
Awesome, guys. We are up on time, so we better round it off. Enis, do you have any final remarks before we close?
Yeah, we've co-invested 5 times so far with Akin. I just counted before entering the podcast. I hope we'll do more now that he has a fund. I'm stalking his LinkedIn to see who he's getting connected with so that, I can hunt them down too.
That is such a beautiful, constantly running sourcing engine that Enis has going on. So beautiful. Regarding TAM, I was sitting here thinking, yes, and gaming is big today, but if we're not living in a simulation already, we probably will in 50 years or so, which makes the TAM infinitely bigger. So I can only imagine that gaming is the place to be at. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having
Thanks a
us.
lot.
Here's a few words from our beloved sponsor. Discover where operational expertise meets innovation. With end-to-end coverage across fund admin, tax, accounting, compliance, ESG, and more, we take care of the complexities so you can focus on what matters most. Whether it's supporting visionaries or maximizing returns for your LPs, our tech-driven and comprehensive solutions empower you to achieve your goals with confidence. Partner with ACE Alternatives to streamline your operations and elevate your fund success.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.